Today's video is sponsored by Hunter Killer. So it's that time of year again. The weather outside's getting frightful, Christmas songs are playing 24/7, and the extended family can't wait to come and squeeze those rosy little cheeks of yours. Still, I know a lot of you are worried that the holidays this year won't feel as special as the ones before. If you're looking for a way to help warm your spirits this festive season, why not try cracking a cold case with a Hunter Killer box set? Unlike watching a homicide investigation unfold on TV, Hunter Killer is a game that makes you a part of the action, placing you in the shoes of a detective and tasking you with catching an elusive murderer. Each box is a part of an ongoing story, and they all come jam-packed with high-quality documents, evidence, audio recordings, case files and ciphers, which you'll use to eliminate suspects and progress through the narrative. As you do, you'll slowly get closer and closer to identifying the killer and completing the mystery. Now, Hunter Killer is a great game to play solo, but this December, it really is the perfect way to bring everyone together. After all, what says holiday cheer more than tracking down a maniac with your family and closest friends? Hey, I know a lot of us are into that sort of thing. So whether you're looking for a collaborative activity this festive season, or are still trying to think up present ideas for that special true crime lover in your life, Hunter Killer is a really thoughtful and unique way to say that you care. Head over to hunterkiller.com/lazymasquerade and use promo code LAZY to get 20% off your first box. If you're looking to get your order before Christmas, you'll have to place it fast. So again, take advantage of that criminally good 20% discount by going to hunterkiller.com/masquerade and using promo code LAZY, and find out if you have what it takes to solve the mystery inside. So let's kick this video off with a recent one. A very recent one, in fact. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Zodiac Killer, a still unidentified serial murderer who claimed the lives of at least 5 people between 1968 and 1969. He operated in Northern California, with his confirmed victims being slain in Benicia, Napa County, Vallejo, and San Francisco. He usually targeted young couples, and although 2 of his male victims did survive their encounter with him, he always attacked his female victims with such fervor so as to guarantee their deaths. For example, in September of 1969, when the Zodiac came upon Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, a young couple having a picnic by Lake Berryessa, he checked that no one else was around, put on his infamous black executioner's hood, approached them, held them at gunpoint, bound them both, and then, completely unprovoked, stabbed the defenseless couple repeatedly with a large knife. Brian was punctured 6 times, Cecilia 10. Brian survived, Cecilia did not. At 7:40 PM, an hour and 10 minutes after the incident, the Zodiac himself called up the police to report what he had done. When the cops finally arrived on the scene, they found that the Zodiac had left them this eerie message carved into the door of his victim's car. He liked communicating with the authorities whenever and however he could. Speaking of which, during his roughly year-long rampage, he sent law enforcement and media outlets numerous taunting letters. In his messages, he claimed to have slain 37 people in total, and said that his motive for doing so was to collect souls that would serve him in the afterlife. He said that, by taking their lives, he believed he was enslaving their spirits for eternity. Yeah, not the most level-headed dude in the world. He often included a list of demands in his messages, such as how he wanted his letters to be published, and made threats about what he'd do if his demands weren't met. This ranged from going on a mass killing spree, to him shooting out the tires of a school bus and, quote-unquote, picking off the kiddies as they came bouncing out. These letters, of course, had the good people of California terrified, but also strangely captivated. Helping to stoke their curiosity were the Zodiac's cryptograms. Along with the letters, the Zodiac also sent the San Francisco Bay Area Press 4 cryptic ciphers containing secret messages. Behind each seemingly meaningless series of characters hid a truly menacing message from a truly sick individual. These cryptograms were published in America's top newspapers so that the general public could help decode them faster. One of these cryptograms was solved by a husband and wife shortly after it was published. The other 3 coded messages, however, proved to be too complex. One of these was the Zodiac's 340 cipher. The Zodiac mailed the cipher to the San Francisco Chronicle in November of '69, along with a bloody piece of his final confirmed victim's shirt. For the past 51 years, the contents of that code have remained a mystery. That is, until 2 days ago, when the authorities announced that the code had finally been cracked by expert codebreakers David Oranchak, Sam Blake, and Jarl Van Eyck. It's insanely cool news for all of us true crime heads. After all of this time, we can finally read one of the Zodiac's secret messages. Translated literally, here's what the 340 Cypher says. I hope you're having lots of fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show. Which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber, because it will bring me to paradise all the sooner. Because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. So they are afraid of death. I am not afraid, because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise. Death. So there you have it. The Zodiac's half-century-old hidden message, full of his characteristic spelling and grammar mistakes. That last part doesn't seem to make any sense at all though, and it's already being speculated that the Zodiac may have flipped some words around to keep people confused, and that the real ending should read, I am not afraid, because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise. Death is life. That seems to make more sense, grammatically at least. The TV show I mentioned at the start of the message was AM San Francisco. In a previous letter, the Zodiac had demanded that a prominent lawyer appear on the show so that he could talk with him live on air. Someone claiming to be the Zodiac did indeed call the show and chat with the lawyer, though, as this cryptogram asserts, it wasn't actually him who made the call. Even with this amazing discovery, the message itself doesn't seem to bring us any closer to learning the Zodiac's true identity, though there is a lot of evidence to suggest that the real culprit was a guy named Arthur Lee Allen. Ultimately, that still remains unconfirmed. Still, with a new development in the Zodiac case happening all these years later, there's renewed promise in the case one day being officially solved, once and for all. Until that day though, we'll take what we can get. And at least now we can officially say that this piece of the puzzle has been solved. I'll leave a link down below to a video uploaded by David Oranchak about how he and his colleagues broke the code. It's a fascinating listen, and huge props to these geniuses for working it out. Also, if you haven't already seen it, I highly recommend checking out David Fincher's movie, Zodiac. It's a gripping retelling of the case, and the investigation surrounding it. It's on the long side, sure, but do yourself a favour and carve out some time on a lazy Sunday and check it out. Trust me, you won't regret it. It's no secret that I'm a fan of grunge music. Nirvana's pretty much the reason I picked up a guitar when I was a teenager. I was lucky enough to see Chris Cornell perform live shortly before he died, and Lane Staley might just be my favourite rock vocalist of all time. But even though the so-called Seattle sound dominated the airways back in the early to mid-90s, not every band rose to stardom. One little-known group from that grunge era was the Gits. The frontwoman and driving force of the band was Mia Zapata, a young woman with an electric personality and stage presence. Though the Gits never achieved much mainstream success, their snappy punk tracks and Mia's fierce charisma earned them a passionate and loyal following. By 1993, when grunge was at its peak, the Gits were just starting to make a lot of noise in the industry. They were sharing bills with the likes of Sublime and Green Day. Sadly, in the early hours of July 7th, everything came to a screeching halt when Mia Zapata's body was found in the middle of an empty street. She'd been raped and strangled to death with the drawstrings of the Gits hoodie she was wearing. She'd been beaten so badly that even if she hadn't been strangled, she'd have perished from her internal injuries. Mia was just 27 years old. An investigation began. On the evening of July 6th, Mia had been out drinking with her friends in Seattle's Capitol Hill area. She left the bar she was at around 2 AM to go and look for her ex-boyfriend, but unable to track him down, she instead went to another friend's apartment where she briefly hung out. Soon after, she walked off alone into the night. 80 minutes later, a woman spotted her lifeless body sprawled out on a deserted street, just 2 miles from the bar where she'd been with her friends. For the longest time, the police didn't have any leads to speak of. By 1998, after 5 years of investigation, Seattle police declared that they were no closer to solving the case than when they first started. There weren't any bodily fluids or fingerprints at the scene. The only DNA evidence they were able to collect didn't belong to anyone on their database. With the police struggling to solve the case, the surviving GITS members, who were desperate for justice, put on a bunch of local shows so that they could raise money to hire a private investigator. Nirvana even appeared as a special guest at one of the concerts to help draw attention to Mia's case, and they even featured on a fundraising album. The shows and album sales generated around $70,000, enough money to hire a PI for 3 years. Sadly, this led to no new suspects coming to light. Despite all the publicity, Mia's case faded into obscurity and went cold. Then, in 2002, almost a decade after Mia's life was so tragically cut short, there was a huge development. The DNA swab that had been taken from the scene 9 years prior finally came up with a match. A man from Florida named Jesus Mesquia, who'd just been arrested for unconnected reasons. They took his DNA, entered it into their database, and it came back positive. He had been living in Seattle at the time of the incident and had an extensive history. When they took him in for questioning, he was initially very calm, but when they asked if he had ever killed anyone in Seattle, he exploded. Yeah, this was their guy. They charged him with Mia's murder that very day. At his trial, the prosecutors asked him a question. How is it possible that his saliva was found on Mia's remains back in '93, when the two of them had never met before? Jesus refused to answer. It took the jury 3 days to find him guilty, and the judge sentenced him to 37 years behind bars. He later appealed, and his 37-year sentence was reduced to 36. Though we don't know the exact sequence of events that fateful night, it's theorized that Jesus saw Mia leave the bar alone, and then followed her to her friend's apartment. He waited for her to leave outside. She'd been wearing a headset that night, so likely didn't hear him coming up behind her. He then dragged Mia into his car. After her death, the remaining GITS members formed the charity organization Home Alive, with the purpose of teaching women self-defense skills, not wanting what happened to Mia to happen to anyone else. Grunge itself died out not long after her untimely demise, with the death of Kurt Cobain, but Mia's legacy still endures in the hearts and minds of many rock fans, especially those in Seattle. Greeley, Colorado, December 20th, 1984. Janelle Matthews, age 12, was performing with the Franklin Middle School Choir at a Christmas concert. Her adoptive family weren't in attendance, since her mum was away visiting Janelle's sick grandfather, and her dad was watching his other daughter's basketball game elsewhere. After the concert, Janelle called a ride home with her friend and friend's mother. They dropped her off at her house at around 8:15 p.m. Janelle entered her family home and found herself completely alone. Her father and sister still hadn't returned. At 8:30, the telephone rang, and Janelle took a message for her father. That was the last time anyone heard of her. An hour later, at 9:30, Janelle's father returned home. The youngster was nowhere to be found. By 10, there was still no sign of her, and he really started to worry. He phoned the police to report his daughter missing. Investigators arrived at the house 15 minutes later and noticed something extremely chilling. There were footprints in the snow outside leading up to the house. Someone had been looking in through the downstairs windows. There were no signs of a struggle or forced entry, but it was clear that someone had taken Janelle. The hunt for her was on. Janelle's disappearance received a lot of public attention at the time, and President Ronald Reagan even mentioned her during a speech. News publications across the country frequently reported on her case. Unfortunately, this was all for naught. For 35 years, Janelle's whereabouts and well-being remained unknown. During all that time, there were barely any leads to work with. It was as if she had just vanished in a puff of smoke. Then, by sheer coincidence, on July 23rd, 2019, workers installing pipeline about 15 miles from where Janelle used to live made a disturbing discovery. In the earth, they found human bones. A DNA test confirmed that the remains belonged to Janelle. Further examination proved that her life had been ended by a gunshot to the head. As tragic as this was, after 35 years she'd finally been found, and her family could have a small modicum of closure. But the question still remained. who had so coldly taken her life away that snowy December night in '84? Well, with her body now discovered, the wheels on this case were finally in motion, and less than 2 months later, authorities announced they had a person of interest. That person was Steve Pankey, a man who'd run for governor in Idaho in 2014 and 2018. He even made his own YouTube account to support his campaign for governorship, an account which has the grand total of 8 subscribers. Pankey had been a youth pastor at the church Janelle's family went to, and lived just 2 miles away from them. In October of this year, they had enough evidence to indict him for Janelle's murder. Numerous details came out following this indictment. It was revealed that Pankey had long been a suspect in the case because he couldn't help inserting himself into it. He'd often go to the police and tell them that he had information about the case, and that in exchange for immunity, he could tell them about it. This, of course, piqued their suspicion. In 2008, Pankey's own son was murdered, and at the funeral, Pankey was heard bizarrely muttering to himself, "I hope God didn't allow this to happen because of Janelle Matthews." Pankey was also a Patreon supporter of numerous podcasts that covered Janelle's mysterious disappearance, including The Trail Went Cold. The guy was obsessed with his involvement right up until the day he was caught. Only then did he start playing dumb and saying that he'd never heard of Janelle or her family. Detectives questioned Pankey's wife about everything, and the poor woman had no idea that she'd been living with Janelle's killer for all of those years. She recalled how at the time of her disappearance, her husband had taken an uncharacteristic interest in the case, frequently scouring radio stations for news about the missing girl. He even forced his wife to read newspaper articles about Janelle's case. She also told them that a short while after news of the case broke out, her husband's car mysteriously caught fire and had to be disposed of at a salvage yard. She has since divorced her killer husband. Sorry, former husband. So, there we have it. After 33 years, Steve Pankey no doubt thought he got away with murder. Well, he thought wrong. Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. Sorry this one's a little shorter than usual. The Zodiac news just came out and I really wanted to get a video out quickly about it, so yeah, look forward to a longer video next time. A shout out to Robin Mickelson for making the thumbnail for this video. He does some amazing work, so if you haven't already, be sure to check him out by the links down below. Also a huge thank you to all of my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters. Hamish Kay, Amanda Hanson, Phantom Knight, Expand On, The Lecky, Leonardo Martinez, Hungry and Hammered, Aura Dragon 1, Ricky Cohen Jr., TheOnlyDorita, Lord 210, Azrael Warakai, Alba Medrano, Infamous-senpapi, Decaying Girl, Connor Louthan, Nadine, Sloane Crawford, Sarah Ramirez, Anna Maywim, Charlie Lackey, Gina Valera, Procupidine Netta, Philip Westra, Alex Greensall, Tom King, Monica Mendoza, and Crawford K McDonald. Thank you guys so much for your continued support, it really helps the channel out. Anyway guys, be sure to smash that like button or I'll smash you, and you'll be hearing from me again very, very soon. Until then, you all stay spooky. And remember, the best things happen in the dark.